You only were a Nazi, I think, were the people that from their heart hated the Jews. That made that almost the part why you were a Nazi, because there was no other reason to be a Nazi. Holland was not in turmoil or anything to say that the government has to go. It has nothing to do with the government. It was personal relation. It was so bad that that uncle that took us in as children, who was always so good and nice to us, who accepted my father with his Jewish girlfriend, always were there. Every holiday we were all together with my father and her Jewish girlfriend, with the uncle and his wife. The moment the war started, Hitler came in, the Jewish relationship was over, and he told my father, "You're going with a Jew." And it separated right away us from that family.
My father's shop was looted. Every single piece of stock was stolen. The windows were smashed. The fittings were all smashed inside, and the shop was totally useless. And my father finally got the message that this wasn't going to go away. And we then sat around the table and wondered what we were going to do. And my father came to the conclusion and said, well, we have no relatives abroad, unlike many other Jewish families. There's nobody we can really call upon, but we have to get out of Vienna, at least for the time being. My parents told us that, well, we're now in a situation where we have no business, we have very little money, and we really need to leave, and we don't know how. So, as a consequence, maybe it'd be a good idea if the two children went on this kinder transport to England, which was being organized by the Jewish organizations, and that would then perhaps give my parents a chance to get out more easily by perhaps even walking across a border, which would be more difficult than with children. And that was the decision taken. Well, it was an emotional day, as you might imagine. I remember very clearly I was all standing on the platform at the train with hundreds of other children, lots of other parents. Everybody was crying, and my parents assured us that it won't be for long. And much as I gave grief to my parents, I really didn't want to leave them. But there you are, 13 years of age. My sister said she'd look after me. She was a great age of 15. So I just remembered a very dark evening and going on the train and a lot of tears, as one might imagine, of people saying goodbye to their children, because the whole train was full of children.
And I was transferred to a very big office where they started to give out the ration cards that you needed to buy food. And those ration cards you could only get if you presented your passport. One day at the afternoon there come two Dutchmen, Dutch Nazis, not knowing they were Nazis, and asked me, "We have to talk to you." And they were then questioning me about these cards and the Jews and the whole thing. I said, yeah, I did take care of these, but I don't know they were Jews. How do I know they're Jews? I have so many friends that say, "Henry, will you please, Hans, will you please get our cards?" Because people stood in line for hours to get their cards. And I just walked in as an employee and did all that. So I had friends, neighbors that said, "Hey, will you bring my cards home tonight or so?" And I did that. So I had these cards with a pile of other cards that I have from other people. I didn't know they were Jews. How do I know? Well, they probably said, "Well, you could have seen the J on it," but I was blind for that. And so they arrested me and they put me in jail.
The
Gestapo took us back, and my mother was not allowed to see us again. We were 3 or 4 weeks old when they took us back. It was in the 5th or 6th week, and my mother became very anxious. She had a feeling that something had happened and she wanted to see us. She knew what they were planning, because she had been forced to sign the agreement that something would happen to us. She went with my grandparents up that great hill to the university to see us. When they got to the pediatric ward, where they had the twins lying next to each other, Rolanda was gone, and my mother panicked. At that time, the nurses there were Sanctrita nurses, young nurses still in training. My mother became hysterical, screaming, "Where is my baby?" That was a natural reaction considering what she had been through. The Catholic nurses did not want to tell her what had happened, but the young nurses urged them to tell her that her child had died. My mother panicked and pulled down the nurse's cap, and my grandmother also went after the nurse, and then they told her that Rolanda was in the bathroom. So my mother went down to the bathroom, opened the door, and you must just imagine what she had been through. She opened the door and my sister was lying in the bathtub with a large bandage on her head. Mother panicked, rushed back, threw open the door and took me out of the bed. My grandfather threw his jacket over me and told my mother not to take anything that belonged to the hospital, no pillows or blankets. Then they wrapped me up and left. My grandmother stayed behind, scuffling with the nurses, in order to give the two of them time to get away. And they agreed to meet up at the Heilige Ritterkirche, the Augustinerkirche, and they met there. That had always been the family's meeting place. My father also came there later, and then they returned to the Burgharder Tor, that is on the other side, and there the Gestapo was already waiting for us. Then I was taken away from my parents.
The tattoo itself wasn't painful or, in the physical sense, but it gave you, at least to me, a sense of having lost one's identity, that you were suddenly a number, A4772. Where was my name? Where was my address? This was now my identity. And that had a very, very strong psychological effect on one's mind and heart.
I heard about Belsen. Everybody knew they must exist. Nobody had seen one. And as soon as I heard that there was one at Exlebing, I was absolutely determined to get there as quick as I could. But there was great piles of dead bodies. There would be, the thing that was so terrible about everybody took the dead bodies, piles of dead bodies for granted. There was a lot of, a pile of dead women, just piled one on top of the other, maybe 6, 8 foot high, and kids running around playing. I saw that people far gone was one woman sat on a pile of dead bodies to relieve herself. It was they were gone.
One day, I don't know, I had lost a little bit not only my will to live, but my capacity. And the other girls, we always were in rows of, the other girls took a very poor view of me, and some of them pronounced that she has had it. She has had it. It was quite clearly mentioned. And I went and I took my blanket, that was the only thing we had, and I went down and I lay down in the line of the dying. And I lay there, I don't know, for about 2 days or 2 nights.
Reisenbaum was a boy, maybe a year older than me. Reisenbaum was there from early 44 to late 44. We slept next to each other. That's important, because we talked at night, because then the caretakers didn't monitor us as much. We pulled the covers over our heads so that the others couldn't hear us and talked, because some of the boys were telltales. They told the caretakers and then we were punished. I admired him and felt myself drawn to him. He was my island, my beautiful island in this horrible ice age that I had to survive there. I held on to him because I saw that he did a lot of thinking without saying much. He was mistreated by the caretakers, and I didn't understand why he was being so mistreated. In our school for the handicapped, the teachers, even Mrs. Grüner, treated him differently. Once we were talking in the hall and he told me that he was Jewish. So I ignored him in front of the other boys and especially in front of the caretakers, but at night under our blanket we would whisper about our yearning for freedom, flowers, meadows, playing, the things that an adolescent thinks about.
Sehnsucht nach Freiheit und Blumen und Wiesen und Spülen und was weiß ich, was halt der Jugendliche sich vorstellt, habe ich den Menschen
I really loved him, literally loved him. One day, and this was a horrible drama, he was picked up by two men in leather coats. He wasn't handcuffed, but they held him on either side and they took him away.
Beiderseitig gehalten, nicht fesseln, aber gehalten, war ja nur Bur, nicht?
I went to the door, something I wasn't supposed to do, and looked after him. He turned around and looked at me. I just cried.
Und hat sich umgedreht und hat mich angeschaut. Und ich habe ihn angeschaut und dann habe ich nur geweint. Ich habe nur geweint. Ich habe gewusst, jetzt habe ich einen Menschen.
I knew I had lost this person, my last support.
Und seit dieser Zeit.
And ever since, I've never been able to have closure as far as Reisenbaum is concerned.
Nie fertig geworden.
That thing that really overwhelmed you all the time was the pitiful and terrible state of these people. It didn't matter what they were. I mean, they were just desperately awful people in an awful state, and I mean, it's a thing I've never forgotten in 50 years. I don't talk about. I'm talking about it now, but I don't talk about it in the ordinary way. But a lot of them were extremely thin and emaciated, hard and staggering along. Some of them mad, covered with terrible sores, and hideous, terrible smells of the dead bodies lying everywhere. I mean, it's a vision of hell.
On the first days under commando, I see about 25 or 3,000 people coming in. You know, they were putting their, their undress, going there, and the only one thing I remember that always the SS were saying is, take your shoes and zusammen machen. Put them together as a pair, and take it in your hand, and walk in through the corridor, before going into the gas chamber, you had to leave it. Somebody was taking them. My first observations of that is that I saw 25 to 3,000 people going on the gas chamber, and they closed the doors, and then I knew that the SS threw the Cyclone B, from above 3-4 openings, and when it takes about 4 or 5 minutes to die, except the people that are in front where the gas is coming, then it takes about a couple of minutes. And after that, when after 15-20 minutes they open up the thing, the first thing I saw the people I saw 15 minutes before alive. I saw the mothers with the children standing up because the gas chamber will take maybe 500 people. It used to make 2,500 people. Everybody standing up. There was no room for anything else but standing up. And when you see that after, some of them are black and blues from the gas. It's something that I said to myself, how can you, somebody, be able to survive in such an environment? Well, the first thing they did, they gave us a pair of scissors to start cutting their hair. Well, where do you go? You start the 1, 2, then I have to put my foot on top of somebody's stomach. And from the gas, I heard big, so I jump up 100 meters away, and I said to myself, how can I do it? There was a Polish guy there, and I said, where is God? And says, God, this is what God is. You have to be very strong to survive. And I said to myself, the only thing I can do, that's why I don't remember a lot of things. I said to myself, I am a robot, and I did just this to my mind. And I said, from now on, close your eyes and do whatever is to be done without asking too much. This is how we went, at least for the first few months. I didn't know what I was doing.
5 in the morning, we were standing in line to be counted and go to the salt mine. One prisoner was missing. And after several recons, the prisoner was still missing. Then the SS guard told the couples to go and look in the barracks, see if he's not there, maybe sleeping. Sure enough, they brought out the missing person, my father, who fell asleep. He was very tired. He was doing hard labor. And then the SS turned to the rest of us, and he said, I want these 2 dirty Jewish dog sons out of the line and stand next to him to see what the punishment is going to be for this. Because that dirty Jewish dog kept Germany from victory 10 minutes. Because that's how long it took to find him. Then he gave a swift kick to my father, and that signaled the couples to start the beating. They were kicking him from left and right. They were beating him. And we, Zoltan and I, got out on our knees, and we Jews don't get on our knees, you know, but we get on our knees and begged the SS, would please stop the beatings, please, or then have us. The more we begged, the more we tried, and at one point I grabbed one of the couple's hand. Now then the whip was on me. So they beat him until he fell on the ground, and he was completely silent, except that I have seen his lips moving. His lips like he was trying to say something. And I came close, and I heard him saying, Shema Yisrael, Adonai, Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Then he became silent forever. Now that's the only time that I lost faith in God. I said, very stupidly, but I said, if God allowed for someone like my father, who couldn't kill a fly, or to something like that happen, cannot be God, cannot be. And in the evening, when I went to sleep, my father appeared to me in my dreams. And he called me on my Hebrew name. He says, Yitzhak, don't ever lose your faith in God.